بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله وسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم أصلح لنا دين الذي هو عصمة أمرنا، وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا، وأصلح لنا آخرة التي إليها معادنا، واجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير، واجعل الموت راحة لنا من كل شر. عليكم السلام. So you said you're reading Idris?
No, I didn't. Oh, you start laughing. Oh, here you go.
I just came in, man.
Yeah, no.
Go ahead, man.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله أنا ابني I need my glasses though, that's the thing. Hold on.
You got a cool eyes, man.
No man, I'm getting old.
Yeah, I'm having that same problem too.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله
So it's المؤلف.
قال المؤلف قال المؤلف رحمه الله عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال أخذ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بمنكبي فقال كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو عابر سبيل. وكان ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما يقول إذا أمسيت فلا تنتظر الصباح، وإذا أصبحت فلا تنتظر المساء، وخذ من صحتك لمرضك ومن حياتك لموتك. رواه البخاري.
So the author, may Allah have mercy on him, he mentions this hadith that Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he narrates that the Prophet ﷺ, he grabbed my shoulder. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he grabbed my shoulder. And we understand from the Prophet ﷺ, and there's a lot of hadith that show this, and this is a very important aspect of the Prophet ﷺ's teaching, is how to teach. And so the Prophet ﷺ was very affectionate when he would teach. He was very loving when he would teach. And there's a lot of hadith that show that, but in this hadith, it shows an aspect of that the Prophet ﷺ, he grabbed my shoulder, and then he said, "Kun fi dunya," be in this world as if you are a stranger or a person who's passing by. Okay? So the person who's passing by, let's think about it in the context of the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and then let's think about it in our times. So in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what would a person that's passing by do? Right? He would, like, let's say you're traveling from Mecca to Medina, right? And then you're passing through, for example, I don't know, Badr or Yambur, right? So which is kind of on the way to Mecca. Did I say Mecca to Medina? Medina to Mecca. Okay? So they're kind of on the way. They're a little bit more, what is that? That's west. Yeah.
Northwest.
South. So Medina is, Mecca is south of Medina.
Correct. Southwest.
So it's south, it's west, yeah. So it's on the coast. So you go on the coast, down a little bit. So it's kind of southwest like that. Right? Did I say that right? Like that? Yeah. Yeah, I did it right. I'm just trying to see if my directions on my hand, the way I'm looking at it, is the right way.
Coast would be east, right? Southeast? West.
It's west. That coast is west.
Right, okay.
Yeah. There's another coast on the other side, but yeah. So let's say you're passing by Yambar, right? So, and if you're traveling back then, that travel is like a 2-week trip, a 3-week trip, something like that, depending on how fast you're going, right? And then I think there was even some reports of a month if you're going really slow, right? So if you can imagine, now you're stopping, like you've gone for like you've traveled for like a week or two, and then you stop, right? So what's your mentality at that point now that you're stopping? Okay, let me get more food and whatever things that I need for the rest of my trip, right? You're not thinking, what can I do, like, to build here?
Right.
What can I do to stay here? Right? How can I look nice here?
Yeah.
Like, you don't care about what people think about you there. Back then, when you would travel, you would be ash'ath aghbar. You would be
Covered in dust.
extremely dirty. You wouldn't care because you're just passing by. Everybody knows you're passing by. No big deal, right? So the mentality that you have at that point when you're passing by is, I don't care about anything in this world. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling Abdullah bin Umar to be like that in this world. Like all the time. Where you don't care about the things that are in it. Right? They don't mean anything to you. And why don't they mean anything to you? Because you're literally just passing by. They say, there's this poetry about, it's called Laysa al-Gharibu Gharib, right? That's the name of the poetry, right? And basically, it talks about a stranger, right? The stranger in this world. They say Laysa al-Gharibu al-Gharib al-Shami wal-Yamani, لكن الغريب الغريب اللحد والكفدي. Right? It's not the stranger is not the person who is a stranger between Sham and Yemen, right? Like Syria and Yemen, right? The strange person is the one who's like thinking about the grave, al-lahdi wal-kafani, like the coffin and the shroud, right? That's the stranger, because that's your home. I mean, think about it. Like in this world, what you're gonna live for maybe 50 years, 60 years, right? And let's think about, let's say, somebody who died in the time of the Prophet, right? They've been in the graveyard. They've been in the grave for more than 1,000 years. So that life is longer than this life. So that's actually the life. I'm not talking about the next life yet, but just the grave. That would be the life, right? So if you're looking at it in terms of duration, the time period that you're stopping in Yamba, or the time period I keep forgetting to look at. Is it possible you can log into the?
I think I have the access right now, right?
Yeah, and then
let them in, right?
and then I'll give you the admin because I keep forgetting to look at it, and then maybe somebody might be sitting there.
I can do it too, sir.
Oh yeah, please. Let me see if I can give you admin. Yep, I got you. All right, so the person passing through, the time that he's passing through is a very short period. That's why he doesn't care. Same thing in this life. It's a very short period compared to the next life. Right? Compared to your life in the grave, and then compared to your life after that. Right? If you just compare the grave, I mean, it's very well possible you could live in the grave for the next 10,000 years. Maybe, I don't know. Only Allah knows, right? And if let's just assume it's 10,000 years. What's that compared to what? 70, 80 years? Maybe 90, like if Allah really blesses you. Right? What is that compared to 90 years? Nothing. Nothing at all. Would you actually put a number on it?
0.0000.
That's an engineer talking about.
Okay, so basically the thing is so therefore we should be focusing on the next life and not this life, right? And in that poetry that I'm talking about, it's pretty long. I think it's like 100 lines or something. he mentions, I don't remember who the author of the poetry was. I want to say it was Ibn Qayyim, but I'm not sure. But anyways, he says, like, the whole poetry is as if he's dead or he's dying. And then he talks about the events that happen as he's going, like, basically from dying all the way until going into the grave and his family leaving. Right? So he's basically putting himself in that situation and then completely tells this whole story that happens. Okay? I mean, he describes like how they're washing my body and how it's feeling as they're washing his body. He describes how it feels as they're putting the shroud on his body, so on and so forth. Like, he describes everything. So there's one part on there that's very impactful to me where he says at the end, or towards the end, when they actually put him in the ground and now his family's leaving. His family's gone. They left, right? So he says, all the money that I saved up, my kids are now spending it carelessly. Like, I worked really hard to save all that money. My kids are now spending it carelessly. And then even my wife went and he called it that she went and married a donkey. And he's spending my money too. But the reason that was so impactful to me, because, like, you hold on to things so much in this world.
For who?
Exactly. When you leave with nothing. There's nothing that goes with you except for your deeds. So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, be in this world as a stranger, right? Or someone who is passing by. Somebody needs to be on mute. I can't do it. If you don't mind doing it, brother Riaz. So therefore, we have to look at this world as just a gharib, a stranger, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, right? This deen is started strange, right? Look at it. When the Prophet ﷺ came, right? People were going against him. And he was a stranger in his own town where they loved him. They revered him. They respected him. Right? And when he said, La ilaha illallah, that was a red line for them. Right? So therefore, he was a stranger in his own place, in his own territory, with his own people. He was a stranger. Right? So he said it started like that. And he said it's going to return like that. And if you look at how we are today, this is the same situation that we're in today. The people that are practicing their deen, the people that are doing what they're supposed to do towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're called extremists. I'm not talking about terrorists or anything like that, but I'm talking about people who are doing the right things according to the Quran and Sunnah. They're called extremists. Right? And they say it's extreme to be like the Prophet ﷺ. That's what they say. When you're doing something that's like that you're trying to be like the Prophet ﷺ, they say, oh, you're being extreme. That's extremism. Right? So this is a stranger. This is a situation of a stranger. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying here, be in this world as if you're a stranger. Meaning you can't think that people will approve of everything you do, that you're going to do. You know, subhanallah, it was deep when when the Prophet ﷺ went to Waraq bin Nawfal with Khadija radiallahu anha, right? When they went to Waraq bin Nawfal, explaining to him what happened when he saw Jibreel, or when Jibreel came to him in the cave, right? So Waraq bin Nawfal told him, I wish I was young so I can fight with you when your people kick you out. He was just like, are my people going to kick me out? Like, that was the furthest thing that he could possibly ever imagine, that the people who love him so much would actually kick him out. Because not too long before that, the Prophet ﷺ, they made him be the mediator between the tribes that were disputing about who's going to put the black stone on, or who's going to do this for the Kaaba, who's going to build the Kaaba, who's going to do this to the Kaaba, and who's going to do that to the Kaaba, so on and so forth. They were fighting about that, and the Prophet ﷺ was seen to be the best person to mediate between all those people. So this is something that just recently happened. When I say recently, years before that, but like, someone with that much respect, how could they want to kick him out? And it's because this deen, it makes you a stranger. When you are trying to practice this deen, you are trying to do the right thing, it makes you a stranger, right? And also, and so that's the gharib, as a stranger, and then as a person who's passing by, is not tying yourself down to this world, right? Subhanallah, like, how much stuff do we have? And then, like, how much is that gonna go with us when we die? Right? I mean, I've heard of a lady. She was not Muslim, who passed away. She had relatives who were Muslim. But anyways, they went to go clean out her house, and I saw like some pictures of how the house looked. Like, it was like jam-packed with stuff. And was deep, was like she's gone. And she took nothing with her. All of that was left for her descendants and family to take care of, or to deal with, so to speak, right? So nothing comes with us, okay? And then Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, he used to say, when you go to the morning, he said, don't wait for the evening. SubhanAllah, this is a mentality that is unique, because you're always assuming that you're dying. SubhanAllah, I mean, think about that for a second. Can you assume, now that it's evening, that you will not go to the morning? And then if you really knew, if you truly knew that tomorrow morning you're going to die, what would you do tonight? There was this one scholar. They said, Ya Sheikh, if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, he said, what would you do? He said, the same thing I always do. Nothing will change. Because he always has that mentality of he's going to die. He's always in that state. Right? Now, there's another aspect, a way of thinking about doing good deeds, that you want to be consistent, and how consistency is very important. So you gotta find a way to balance between consistency and maximizing your potential, right? Because you don't want to do something and then stop, and then do something and then stop, because when you do too much, it messes with your determination, morale. Because, like, let's say, for example, you say you want to do qiyam, so you get up and you pray 5 hours of qiyam layl, right? And you don't do any qiyam. So, but now when you get up and you do 5 hours, you might be able to keep it up for a couple days. But then, like, how long can you keep that up? Do you know what I'm saying? So the goal always has to be, when you're doing a good deed, is that when I embark on this good deed, I will not stop it for the rest of my life. I mean, did we talk about the hadith of Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu? How he was fasting, and the Prophet ﷺ told him to only fast a certain amount of days, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the point of that hadith, or one point of the hadith, because there's a lot of points in there. One point of the hadith is to understand that, like, whenever we do a good deed, we have to try to be consistent for the rest of our lives in that good deed. Okay? And when I say for the rest of our lives, it doesn't matter how long you live, like the rest of your life. Right? So if you have that mentality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you blessings from places that you will never expect. Right? Because that is istiqamah. That is what istiqamah is. Right? And what is istiqamah? Where Allah subhanahu, or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, say I believe in Allah, thumma istaqim. And then be steadfast. That is steadfastness. When you're consistent for the rest of your life. Okay? So, and the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, that's how they started with good deeds. Right? Like the Prophet ﷺ, he started with his good deeds, they started with just being alone. And calling on Allah. And worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Right? He did that before he was a prophet. And that's how his good deeds started. But nonetheless, they started step by step. Right? Same thing, the Quran came to the Prophet ﷺ one step at a time. It didn't all just come at one time. It came step by step. Right? Same thing with the companions, radwanullahi alayhim. Like, Salah came to them one step at a time. Right? They were doing some type of prayer before Salah was revealed. But Salah wasn't revealed like as soon as the Prophet ﷺ became a prophet. It was revealed a little later. Right? So that's stages. Alcohol was not prohibited in the beginning of this. Fasting was not prescribed until Medina. So 13 years in Mecca, it was not an obligation to fast in Ramadan. Right? Stages. So the same thing for us is that we have to go into this ibadah in stages, one step at a time. Right? And every step has to be a step that you are staying consistent with for the rest of your life. The goal should be, what should the goal be? Let me ask you guys that. What is your goal in ibadah? What should be your goal?
Pleasure of Allah.
So, yes, the pleasure of Allah, but I mean...
Go to the Jannah, of course. Get Jannah.
I think, so the question that I'm trying to ask, like, how do you want to do?
As much as you can consistently do.
Slowly increase
But where is your max?
So it's hard to be that is to match Rasul Sallallahu
Ah,
Yeah.
yes, the Prophet ﷺ. That's our goal. That's our goal, to be like him. Okay? So if we're constantly trying to be like him, obviously, we're not going to get there, because that was Rasulullah ﷺ, right? It was the best of mankind. But that is our example. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ إِسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. That in the Prophet ﷺ is the perfect example, meaning that we want to be like him. Who wants to be like him? The people who want the next life. لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ, the one who want Allah and the next life, then they use the Prophet ﷺ as the example. You know what I'm saying? That is their example. It shouldn't be this sheikh this and that sheikh that, this person here and that person there. Because all those people that we're talking about, if they are as amazing as we think they are, what was their example? The Prophet ﷺ. Right? So that should be our bar. And if that's your bar, you're never there. And you're constantly, because you got to understand, when Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked the Prophet ﷺ when he was praying so much, the thing is, he was praying so much that his feet were cracking, like they were bleeding. Okay? The thing that's deep about that, when you stand for a long time, your back hurts. Your legs maybe hurt. But your feet? Like, how long was he standing? Right? Okay, the hadith that we hear about how he prayed, like on a random day, I believe it was Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu, who went to go pray with him. And it was just a random day. So he gets up and he prays. And it's like, it's not a special, like there's something special going on this day. It's literally a random day. He reads Baqarah, he reads Ali Imran, and he reads Nisa in the first rak'ah. Okay? And then the thing that he said on top of that, he would read, and then if there was an ayah that was talking about Jannah, he would make dua to make him from it, from those people. And if there was an ayah that was talking about the hellfire, he would make dua to make him not from them. Right? So he was taking his time. Right? He was enjoying it. Chilling. Right? And then Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, I had a bad thought. They said, you had a bad thought? Like what? He said, I thought about sitting down.
Can we pray during the salah? You know, we only have to do the Arabic thing. We can't do out of Quran, right? In the salah, during salah, we can't say anything besides Quran.
When it's a sunnah salah, so when it comes to an obligatory salah, yes, you cannot say anything else. But for a sunnah salah, you can say dua.
So even in obligatory, even in sujood, you can't say anything extra. Like
So sujood, you can make dua, but in Arabic.
Okay.
So in the salah, you have to dua in the Quran dua, right? Not the dua in our language or any other language.
Arabic.
Right?
Arabic.
Like say for right now, if he's like saying, Allahumma hafadna al-muslimin fi Filastin, can you say that in your obligatory?
In sujood, yes.
Sujood, yeah.
Yes. So in sujood, yes, you can say it in the obligatory salah. But anywhere else you cannot, no.
We can say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned his names in
Obligatory?
But no obligatory.
No.
No.
No. You have to completely sign
Can
it.
you repeat, please, brother? Can you repeat?
The question is, can we say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam if the Prophet ﷺ is mentioned in an ayah in the obligatory salah? And the answer is no. Because you cannot say anything in the obligatory salah. But the sunnah salah, you can say, oh Allah, make me from them. Because the Prophet, like I said, the Prophet ﷺ used to do that.
And in the sunnah salah, you can use your own language.
No, Arabic. So,
Only Arabic language, right?
yes.
No other language.
So
Even in sujood and the Quran too?
yes. So in sujood, you should not be reciting Quran. Quran, you cannot recite in sujood. Aisha radiallahu anha used to even change, like let's say, for example, you say, رَبَّنَا أَتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. She would change it a little bit to say, for example, Allahumma Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar. Right? So does that make sense? You could change it a little bit.
Say Allahumma.
You could say Allahumma Rabbana, for example.
But even in Sunnah, you can't use any other language then.
Okay, so there is
Because
some difference of opinion on that,
okay.
but really you want to be safe.
Okay.
So
That limits non-Arab speakers to everything.
well, you see, though, understand, dua.
I mean, Allah knows, obviously.
Well, wait a second. So let's talk about what is dua. You know, there's a difference of opinion between the scholars about what is better, dua or Quran. Like if I have some time,
Yeah.
say I have 10 minutes, okay, and I want to do something, should I read Quran or should I make dua? Oh, but even, let's say, for example, there's something really important that I want to make dua for. It's urgent. Should I read Quran or make dua? Quran is better.
And even, I mean,
This is a long discussion, though. There are some difference of opinions between the scholars on this issue. But if you think about it, like, what is dua? Dua is that you're calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask Him about a specific thing. Right? But in calling on Allah, what are you getting? What do you get when you make dua?
Reward.
Istijaba, but how? Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ وَدِعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Call on me and I will answer. So therefore, it's an agreement between the scholars that the dua of a Muslim is answered. How is it answered? One of three ways. One is that it's given to you. Not necessarily when you're asking for it, but it will be given to you. Two is that something bad can be taken away from you. And then three is that something is given to you in the next life. Something better in the next life. So it's a win-win situation. And Allah is basically dealing with you in what is best for you. You could be asking for something, but that something is not best for you. So therefore, He gives you what is best for you. Does that make sense? But if you think about it, that same thing that I just did, and that same reward that I just got, is the exact same thing I get when I read Quran. Because when I'm reading Quran, I'm getting closer to Allah, so therefore Allah is giving me what's best for me. Does that make sense? So it's the exact same thing, but the Quran is more virtuous and the Quran is getting me closer. So the answer is the Quran is better, yes.
Can I go off on a tangent? I mean, there's also hadith that when you send salawat to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the more you do it, that's better than any dua. Like there was a Sahaba
Right.
that said, you know, like, should I do 1/4?
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
That the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when you say sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the Prophet alaihi wasallam, then Allah gives you prayers and salams 10 times. But still, the Quran is better than that.
Still, the Quran is ordering us to do so, to right.
Yeah. Well, the Quran is the highest level of worship.
Okay. It's the word of Allah.
But there are certain times when dua is preferred over anything, like
I can't hear you.
iftar.
Say it again from the beginning.
I mean, there are certain times when dua is preferred.
So that's another issue. The other question is, the times for dua, for a specific dua. What is it better? Because now that we've discovered Quran is the best, right? So now there comes a specific time that is best. The Prophet ﷺ used to do this in this specific time. For example, he would say this before he went to sleep. He would say this when he woke up. He would say this when he goes into the bathroom. He would say this when he goes outside, leaves his house. He would say this when he so on and so forth. All these things that are tied to a time or a place or an event, so on and so forth. What is better? That specific thing to say or Quran? So the scholars, they say it's better to say that specific thing. right? And if you think about it, because Quran, you can say it anytime, right? But that dua in that specific time is a very short period, and it's giving you a very specific type of reward and a very specific type of thing that the Prophet ﷺ was getting, or is teaching us to get. Does that make sense? I don't know where we were before we went on this tangent about dua. Where were we?
You were talking about
Consistency and
Consistency, okay, in good deeds, yeah. And then the reason I was talking about consistency in good deeds is because of the idea of or thought that I'm going to die tomorrow, or I'm going to die before the evening, right? Either before the evening or before the morning, right? So in this idea that you have that I'm going to die, you can go to the extreme of overdoing it. Okay? And that's not the point here. But rather the point is to maximize your potential. To maximize your potential. And to maximize your potential is to do what you can do consistently for the rest of your life. That is maximizing your potential. Because we understand there is no ifrat and tafrit, right? Nor tafrit. Like there are many things that have rights over us in this world, right? Your spouse has rights over you. Your children have rights over you. Your parents have rights over you. And I'm not saying it in the right order, but you guys understand my point, right? Your community has rights over you. Your body has rights over you. So on and so forth, right? Everything has a certain amount of rights over you. So what's important is that you are not giving so many rights to one thing and neglecting another, right? It's important that we give everyone and everything their due right. Okay? And how is it that we do that? Is that we are being consistent for the rest of our lives on the deeds that we do. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with that consistency. And then the other one, he says, وَخُذْ مِنْ صِحَّتِكَ لِمَرَضِكَ. Right? He says, take advantage of your health before you get sick. Take advantage of your health before you get sick. So, and this is, subhanAllah, the amazing aspect of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with his endless bounty, he rewards us for what we do on our consistent basis, even if we're not able to do it. Right? So let's say you're used to, praying the rawatib of salah. The 2 before Fajr, 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr, so on and so forth, right? You're used to doing this every day. And then you get sick. And you just don't have the strength to do it. You can't do it. You're still getting that reward for doing it. How amazing is that? Right? You're used to doing it, but it's the sunnah to not do it while you're traveling. Right? When you travel, it's the sunnah to not do sunnah. You guys know that, right? Except for the sunnah for Fajr.
Yeah.
That one, the Prophet ﷺ used to do that while he was traveling as well. But all the other sunnahs, it's the sunnah to not do the sunnah. You're getting the blessings for it. Right? I mean, when you think about it as well, like when you're traveling, you do 2 rak'ahs for Dhuhr, 2 rak'ahs for Asr. You're still getting the blessings of 4 rak'ahs. Right?
I don't know if I have to ask this question, but sometimes you plan to pray Dhuhr 4 before Dhuhr, but you have time. Then while you are driving, something happen in front of you, or traffic stop you, whatever. So do you think that can be, going to be counted too if you fell short to meet that time?
Okay, so like in the previous hadith that we just talked about last week, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven mistakes and forgetfulness. Okay? So if that falls under the category of a mistake, it's forgiven.
I'm talking about the sunnah salah before those salah.
Same thing.
You have to leave earlier.
Okay. thank you.
So there's due diligence.
Yeah.
There's due diligence, and if you did your due diligence, then I mean Allah forgives mistakes. So the mistakes applies to sunnah as well. Okay, let's talk about this aspect, and I think we talked about it a little bit before. Is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ or ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ حُرُمَاتِ اللَّهِ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ. Those who make great in their sight, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's harams, like things that are important to Allah, you make them great to you, then that is from taqwa. What does taqwa mean?
Shield
Of
against haram.
From the punishment of
From the punishment of Allah.
from the punishment of Allah
By
Staying away from haram.
bad deeds and doing good deeds.
by staying away from bad and doing good. There you go. Right.
You're gonna give a word.
Every time I'm going to ask you guys until we get it perfectly.
Yeah, okay.
Can you say
Because-
that one more time?
Taqwa
Yeah.
is to shield yourself from the punishment of Allah by staying away from bad and doing good. In Arabic is جَعْلُ وِقَايَةٍ بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ عَذَابِ اللَّهِ. I don't know if you guys want to hear that, but بفعل ما أمر الله به وترك ما نهى عنه. So it is taqwa when you are making great the things that are great to Allah. Meaning this. Now, there are levels to this. Right? The level of the Prophet ﷺ, when he was praying at night, and he was praying Baqarah, Ali Imran, and Nisa in the first rak'ah. And this didn't happen on this instance, but when the Prophet ﷺ, his feet were bleeding, Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked him, she said, Ya Rasulullah, like, why are you doing this when Allah has already forgiven everything that you're going to do? He said, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Shouldn't I be a thankful servant? Okay? So, this mentality that the Prophet ﷺ had, like, we want to be like the Prophet ﷺ, yes or no?
Yes.
So we want this mentality. So what is this mentality? This mentality is that I am making great whatever is great to Allah. Okay? Allah loves for me to read the Quran the way the Prophet ﷺ read it. So therefore, if I'm not exactly reading it the way he did, I'm messed up. Because I need to be exactly like that. Allah loves it if I pray like the Prophet ﷺ prayed. If I'm not praying exactly the way the Prophet ﷺ prayed, it's not good enough. Because Allah deserves better. Like Allah gave you ears, eyes, a nose, and we could go down this long list. We could stay on this for years, and we can make the list of the things that Allah gave us, right? And it'll never end. Every single one of those things that Allah gave us deserves for us to be praying all night long. They deserve it. Every single one of the things that Allah blessed us with, we should be prostrating in sujood and never getting up for the rest of our lives. So, because Allah deserves so much, whatever it is that we put forward to Allah, we should never think that it was special. Like how? How could it be special? when Allah gave me so much? Allah has given me so much and He's continuing to give me so much. How can that thing that I did, whatever it is, salah, fasting, whatever it was, how can that be significant? How? Right? So therefore, you're belittling everything that you've done in the past, and that you're trying to constantly get higher to the Prophet ﷺ. You're trying to be like that, because that's that perfection that you want to get to, that you're after. Does that make sense? So therefore, when I'm looking at a good deed, the perfection that I'm trying to reach is the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? Why was I mentioning that? I lost my train of thought. Stuff for what? وخذ من صحتك لمرضك. What's that? Right. So this is something Abdullah bin Umar used to say, that take advantage of your health before you get sick, right? And I was trying to help us understand this mentality of consistency and working towards becoming better and better, and this understanding that we want to be like the Prophet ﷺ, right? So that one day when we get sick, or min hayati kalimotik, or one day when we die, when our deeds stop, that we are prepared for that. So how do you take advantage of your life before your death? Is that you establish some type of sadaqah jariyas, right? We know the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he said that your deeds, they stop when you die except for three things, right? One is when you have a child that's going to make dua for you. Two is when you gave a sadaqah and that sadaqah continues to reap benefits, right? There's lots of types of sadaqah for in that regard. There's many things that you could do. I'm sure you guys probably know more about that than I do. Do you need examples, or? For example, a well. A well, for example, is a sadaqah that would last for a long time, right? For example, a school. I've seen things in Saudi Arabia where people, like, they would build a building and then they would rent it out, and then all the proceeds from that rent go towards some type of sadaqah. For example, maintaining a school, for example, feeding poor people, for example, right? And then that building can potentially last for 100, 200 years.
Like the wealth of Rahman Affan. You see that tall building that says.
That really is a waqf for Uthman?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Which tall building?
It's close to the Haram. There's a big board that says Waqf Rahman Affan.
Are you sure it's Uthman ibn Affan?
Yeah.
The name is wrong.
No. Right?
Okay.
She saw it too.
So it's behind the Haram?
Yes, on the back side of it.
Is it where you know where the fountain is? Maybe there's not a fountain anymore, but you know the big opening. Is it there?
It's on the it's on the back side. It's like on the main road.
Bought some kind of garden at the time of Rasulullah.
But I mean, because I remember it vividly, because I was surprised. I was like, SubhanAllah. I mean, even, and it's still under, some of it was still under construction. Even I can pull it up. I mean, I think there is.
Because I know there's a waqf for Mansa Musa.
Oh really?
Do you guys know Mansa Musa?
Yeah, the richest man in the world.
Yeah, there's quite a few waqfs behind the Haram in Medina.
Oh, really?
Yes,
SubhanAllah. I didn't know that.
yes. May Allah have mercy on him.
I mean,
But yeah, that's a very common thing in Saudi Arabia that they do that. They would build like a hotel, and it's a humongous building, and then all the proceeds that go to the hotel are basically going to feed poor people or something. They give it away somehow, right? So that's a waqf that will last, for a very long time. An example of that.
it's a hotel.
Yeah, send me that when you get a chance. I would love to.
I remember every time, because
I would love to figure out like how he did that.
because I think this is based on the well he bought. I think in was it in Badr or one of the battles he bought a well, and then this kind of grew from that.
Okay.
Because
Well, all of the 10 companions who were extremely rich when they died,
yeah,
who were promised Jannah,
yeah.
and Uthman radiallahu anhu was one of them. So
I'll put this in
the
the.
question is, what did they do with their money?
Yeah, see, that's that building. It's
There's Zubayr ibn Awwam radiallahu anhu. When he died, all of his money went to his descendants, right? And Urwa radiallahu anhu, one of his children, he did some waqfs for his father. I don't think Abdullah did, as far as I know. I don't know. Radiallahu anhu. But the amount of money that was left behind by Zubayr ibn Awwam radiallahu anhu to his children, it was about, I think, in the order of like $30 billion. Yeah. But they didn't live rich. They lived very poor.
They were strangers.
Huh? They were strangers. Exactly. They were strangers in this world. So that's one way to prepare for death with your life, because you're trying to find ways to use the things that you're making in this world so that you're benefiting later on. While you're dead, you're continuing to benefit, and that's amazing. Uthman radiallahu anhu has been dead for 1400 years.
it's still going.
SubhanAllah.
That's when I saw it, I was like, just blew my mind.
And then one other aspect of this, and this is why knowledge is so important, is when you teach, right? So like, let's say you teach somebody to read the Quran, and this person teaches someone else, and that person teaches someone else, and that continues, right? So imagine how many blessings the Prophet ﷺ is getting. Imagine how many blessings the companions are getting. Abdullah ibn Umar is getting for this hadith, for example. How many blessings the Bukhari is getting, Imam Muslim is getting, so on and so forth. Right? So this is why it's so important to learn this deen, is like, it's, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said that a scholar compared to normal people is like the moon compared to the rest of the planets. There's just no comparison. There's no comparison, right? SubhanAllah, time flies. La ilaha illallah. And that's the end of the hadith, right? Rawah al-Bukhari. What's the next hadith? No. I think you might have one that doesn't have all 50. But there's 42 hadith in not just 41.
There's 42.
But
This
it should be 50 altogether.
41.
تفضلي.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله عن أبي محمد عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به حديث بإسناد صحيح.
This hadith, there's a lot of discussion between the scholars of the authenticity of it. The majority of the scholars, they say it's a weak hadith. However, Imam al-Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, he said it's hasan, meaning acceptable. Okay? But even the scholars who say it is a weak hadith, they agree on the meaning. That it is, the meaning is authentic. But is the hadith itself authentic? But regardless, every scholar agrees that this meaning of the hadith is correct. Right? Which is that the Prophet ﷺ said, none of you will truly believe until your desires are in compliance with what I brought. Meaning you love everything the Prophet ﷺ brought. Right? There is a line of poetry that we were just talking about yesterday. لأستسهلن الصعب أو أدرك المنى, something like that. Right? So I'm going to make easy the difficulty until I reach my goals. Right? Until I reach my dreams. Meaning, so this is what do you call it? The self-help people, or the motivational people, the philosophical motivational people, right? They all say that you have to learn to love the things that you do in order to be good. Right? Let's say, for example, you are an engineer, right? But you don't like engineering. Right? Then a smart thing is that you have to find a way to love engineering, so that, because that makes you good at it. When you actually have a passion for it, it makes you good at it. Does that make sense? So it's the same thing in regards to this deen. If you love the deen, then you'll love everything that comes with it. Everything that is a part of it, you love it all. Because this deen is everything for you. Right? And anything that the deen is against, you hate it. Right? You hate it. And so, this is a mentality that it's easier said than done to come by this mentality. But this mentality is something that we all have to try to work on in order to reach that level of iman. So that our desires are with it. And the proof of this hadith, that it is authentic, meaning the meaning is authentic, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ حَبَّبَ إِلَيْهِمُ الْإِيمَانِ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْهِمُ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانَ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الرَّاشِدُونَ فَضْلًا مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the companions and how that they are special. So as He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them love Iman and made it beautiful in their hearts. Love Iman, what does that mean? Iman, understand, Iman is what you say and what you do. But it's in your heart, but it's manifested in what you say and what you do. Does that make sense? So Allah made them love all of that. Meaning salah, zakah, fasting, hajj, and everything that we do in Islam, everything the Prophet ﷺ brought, they loved it. I mean, they used to follow the Prophet ﷺ, and when he would spit, they would grab his spit and wipe it on themselves. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, when one time he was going down a road, and then he stopped, and he went somewhere and he peed. And they said, why did you do that? He said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ doing that exact same place. So I went and did it exactly the way he did it.
And he bent below,
Yes.
below the tree there, yeah.
Subhanallah.
And the tree wasn't there anymore.
The amount of dedication that the companions had in following the Prophet ﷺ was unmatched. They loved everything about it, about what he was. They loved everything about the things that he brought. And then they hated everything that went against it. So Allah made them love Iman and made it beautiful in their hearts. And He made them hate kufr and fusuq and asyan. Right? And we know what kufr is. Fusuq, we talked about fisq. What is fisq? I don't know if you guys remember that. It's probably 10 years ago, something like that, right? I'm telling you, we got to do quizzes all the time.
We need a final exam.
A final exam? No, I don't like that. I just like giving you guys a hard time. That's better. It's more fun for me. Fisq is basically what happens to a date that leaves its you know how a date, well, most of the dates that we have are like dryish, but the dates in when they're original, they're like soft, right? And they have like a covering, right? That covering, when the date leaves that covering, that's called fisq. Okay.
The action of it, or or what is called fisq?
The date itself, right?
The fact that the date left its covering is fisq. Okay. Now, what's wrong with that? Why is that a problem? Because the date is exposed and therefore going to get rotten, right? Much faster. So a fasiq is basically leaving his covering. And what is your covering?
Islam.
The tenets of Islam. Right? So a fasiq is basically somebody who is entrenched in wrong. Right? He's exposing himself to possibly being destroyed by being entrenched in wrong. Okay? So Allah made them hate kufr. Kufr is completely outside of Islam. Fisq is the level below that.
What is the difference between munafiq and fisq then? Is there a difference between them?
So there's two types of munafiq. There's a munafiq that is a kafir, right? And that is a munafiq that is hiding his disbelief. He doesn't believe in Islam, but he's hiding it. He's acting like he's Muslim, right? There's that munafiq that's a kafir. So he's a kafir. Then there's the other munafiq that is a fasiq. Okay? Because he is a munafiq, he's a fasiq. Does that make sense? And that munafiq is a fasiq by his actions because he betrays himself to be this, but he's like way lower. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. And that is the type of nifaq that the companions were afraid of. And it's the type of nifaq that Zayn al-Abidin radiallahu anhu, he used to say, Prophet ﷺ's great grandson. He used to say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min an tuhassina fi lawa'ih al-uyuni ala niyyati. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you in making beautiful in like what people see, making all of that amazingly beautiful, meaning in me. Like all the things that I have, making it beautiful in front of people. وَتُقَبِّحَ فِي خَفِيَّاتِ الْعُيُونِ سَرِيرَةٍ. And then to make ugly or disgusting the things that people don't see. Allahumma kama asa'tu wa ahsanta ilay fa idha udtu fa'ud alay. He said, oh Allah, just like I was bad and then you did good to me, if I do bad again, please do more good to me. Right? So that was the dua Zayn al-Abidin used to make. The point that I'm trying to say is that the companions, the tabi'een, And all the scholars till this day are afraid of that type of nifaq. That is fisq. Okay? Where you're, the goal that the companions is that the things that people don't see is better than the things they do see. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to be from amongst those people that are better in private than they are in public. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, when he used to get praised, he used to say, oh Allah, don't hold me accountable for what they're saying. Allahumma la tu'akhidhni bima yaqulun. Waghfir li lima la ya'lamun. And forgive me for the things that they don't know. Like when somebody's like saying, oh mashallah, you're this and you're that, you're this and you're that. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu used to say, don't hold me accountable for what they're saying. Because like he's saying to himself, I know what I am when these guys are saying this stuff about me. And then he says, and also, like, forgive me for the things that they don't know about. And then he says, وَاجْعَلْنِي خَيْرًا مِمَّا يَظُنُّونَ, and make me better than what they're thinking that I am. Right? So it was always the goal of the companions and scholars till this day to have a better private life than a public life. Again, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst them. Why did I mention that? I'm losing my train of thought today. So we were talking about, yes, ولكن الله وكره إليهم الكفر والفسوق والعصيان, and disobedience, like even just the small sins. Allah made them hate that. He made the companions hate that.
What's Asyan? Sorry.
Asyan is sins, just small sins. Then he says, أولئك هم الراشدون, those are the guided. فضلا من الله ونعمة, this is like a blessing from Allah. They are guided not because they're special, because Allah gave it to them. This guidance is because Allah blessed them with it. Okay? So this ayah is proof that this hadith, the hadith's meaning is authentic. So like I said, all scholars agree on the meaning, but they disagree on the authenticity of the chain of narration. Regardless, so we accept the meaning. And the meaning is that your iman is not complete until your desires are with what the Prophet ﷺ brought. So therefore, this is a lifelong struggle to find a way to love what the Prophet ﷺ brought. Uthman radiallahu anhu, he used to say, whoever gets bored from reading the Quran, there's something wrong with his heart. Like, check your heart. SubhanAllah, this saying has been weighty on me my entire life, because like, who doesn't get bored from reading the Quran? Right? Am I lying? SubhanAllah. What's that? So this, like, the Quran, the Prophet or Uthman radiallahu anhu is basically saying, like, if you truly are with it, then you would be sad to leave it. It'd be like, oh man, I gotta leave it, okay. Right? And that's, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with that. And that is where your iman is on the path of Prophet. Like, and it's not just the Quran. It's not just this avenue and that avenue and that avenue. It's in every avenue the Prophet brought. Every avenue. Every aspect of the deen. From little to small. From little to big, I mean. From every aspect of Islam. The way the Prophet walked, the way the Prophet talked, the way the Prophet carried himself in every single way. Right? That's how the companions were. They were constantly trying to find everything about the Prophet ﷺ, and they were constantly trying to implement everything in their lives. Everything. 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 Okay? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to be on that path. Any questions? Alhamdulillah, you guys understand everything. So if I ask you guys questions about it next week, then you guys should be able to do good on the exam. What do you call it? I love giving you guys a hard time.
It's good. It's fun.
It's more fun than giving you guys an exam. Alhamdulillah.
I'll be taking, if you have to take, give us some kind of questions. Take a
You know, I've never liked exams. I've always thought that they're stupid.
I agree.
How are you gonna differentiate people understand you do not understand?
No.
Islamic knowledge, yes.
People forget very fast. Yeah.
I understand
So-
Islamic knowledge wise, yes. I mean, to be honest with you, I've been in classrooms for most of my life.
The thing is this. Okay. I can see the purpose of exams when it comes to like secular knowledge. That makes sense because there's money associated with that, right? But when it comes to Islamic knowledge, like when you have something, it's obvious, and when you don't, it's also obvious, right? So like I've seen, right, who have PhDs, and then like, and I'll see like, okay, I'll give you guys a. I guess we got a few minutes, so I'll tell you guys a story. Did I ever tell you guys about Sheikh Ahmed Sanusi? Okay. This is a guy who's about my age, maybe a little bit older, maybe about 2 years older than me. I'll tell you the full story about how I met him. My father knows a guy. He passed away, may Allah have mercy on him. He knew him from back in the day when my father studied in Mecca. And this guy had a son. This guy passed away. He had a son that he would come visit my father to show him respect because he knew that my father was his father's friend. So this guy who is that guy's son has a PhD and he's a professor at the university, right? So I go to him one day because I always see him with my father. I'm like, I want to take a private class with him, learning ground, right? So I go to him and I say, Sheikh, can I read to you book so and so? I don't care if you give me an hour a week, 20 minutes a week, just something that we can be consistent with, and I can cover the book and I'm benefiting, right? Like something we're doing in the haram, right? He said, Wallahi man, I'm gonna be honest with you, I can't give you time. I don't have that much time. He said, but the better option for you is that you read the Sheikh Ahmed. And he points to the guy right next to him, who to me looks like he's my age. So at first I thought he was joking, right? Because again, this guy is a professor in the university, and he's pointing to somebody who's like my age, and at the time I'm like 21 years old, 20 maybe, something like that, right? But he wasn't laughing, and he was very serious. I was just like, okay. So I set up a time with him, and I went and sat with him. So I sat with him. So turns out he's from Chad, okay, which is Central Africa. So I sat with him, and the first class, the entire time I'm sitting there like this, And I was just dumbfounded about like how it didn't matter what topic he was talking about. It sounded like he studied it for like the past 60 years. That's what it sounded like. And I'm not like somebody very knowledgeable, but I can tell when you know a lot. When it's just like you're just flooding the gates with all this knowledge, and I'm just like, man, how do I get this? I don't even have time. Like slow down. Like, give me a minute, right? So I was studying with him for like maybe 2 weeks like that, and then I asked him, Ya Sheikh, I said, Ya Sheikh, and this is my fault. Then I asked him, I said, how did you study Arabic? I should have said, how did you study? But I just said, how did you study Arabic? So he started cracking up. And then he said, that's a good question. Let me tell you. So he said when he was six years old, his father, who's a scholar in Chad, and by the way, his entire family is scholars, mashallah. So his father taught him Ajrumiyya, right? Ajrumiyya is like a book, a grammar book that you learn high school usually in most Muslim countries. Sometimes middle school if you're like, very advanced, right? So he was learning that when he was 6, but with his father's explanation. So he would like teach him verbally, with no written text or anything. So he said he did that, like he taught me that like a couple times. Then he said I learned Qatr al-Nada, I learned Mutammimatul Ajrumiyya, and then he started mentioning a whole bunch of books I've never heard before in my life. Like he was just going on and on and on about this book and that book, and I was like, okay, and I didn't understand any of them. And then he said, oh, and then now I got to Alfiyat ibn Malik. Alfiyat ibn Malik is a book that you learn in college, at least college level, right? In Islamic universities, right? So he got to Alfiyat ibn Malik after all those books that I've never heard of before, when he was 14. So he went and he studied with the Mufti of Chad for the first half of it, the first half of Sharh ibn Aqil. And then he went and studied with his brother in Mecca, who's was a teacher in Dar al-Hadith al-Khairiyya in Mecca, right? And then he studied with my brother's father-in-law that I told you guys about before. So he studied with him as well. So anyways, this Sheikh Ahmed Sanusi, I later found out, alhamdulillah, I was his first student in Medina. I'm pretty sure he probably had students in Chad, but in Medina I was his first student. But he would go to class, and he would go to class with no books, and he would just sit in the class, and it didn't matter what subject it was. They would teach and teach and teach, and they would look at him and say, Sahih Sheikh Ahmed? And his colleagues all confirmed that they were doing this for every class. They had to confirm with him, because otherwise sometimes he might say something that would, kind of put them on the spot. You know what I mean? And this guy, again, he's like my age. And at the time I was like 20, maybe 21, so he was like 23. He still wasn't married yet when I first met him. Do you know what I'm saying? And he didn't have a PhD. Right? He never took an exam back in his country. He didn't have those. He didn't do those. Right? So, and then when he stood next to people with PhDs, like the guy who I told you, and he's been teaching for at least 10 years. He's a professor for at least 10 years. Like he told me, he is better for you than me. That's what he said. And that's why I thought he was joking. Because there's no way, come on. Because he's a PhD in Arabic, right? And he said that he is better than me. You get what I'm saying? And when I sat with him, yeah, it made sense. Like I think he memorized all Kutub al-Sitt, for example. But there are people like this. Is what I'm trying to say is that this knowledge, it's it's a lifestyle. It's not I went to this university and I studied this and I studied that. It's how you live your life when you're seeking this knowledge. So when you are on this path of seeking knowledge, it's a dedication that you're giving to it for the rest of your life. Right? And then when you put that dedication in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you. Like this brother, may Allah bless him, my Sheikh Ahmed Sanusi, and his family, Allah bless them. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless them. Allah. So I was saying that this family, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them, and this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us, that He gives you a little bit, and then He sees what you do with it. What are you going to do with that little knowledge that Allah gave you with? Are you going to increase, and are you going to use it? Okay, so if you're looking to increase, and you are looking to use it, then Allah blesses you with more. So on and so forth. And then until it gets to a point where it's just, get it. Right? This is just the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to whom He pleases. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with more knowledge and more actions on that knowledge. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.